TNCRadio.LIVE, your commercial driver navigation station.
Good afternoon and welcome to TNCRadio.LIVE. This is the Truckers Network radio show with Shelley Johnson.
Thank you, Tom. I appreciate that. Yes, this is the Truckers Network radio show on TNCRadio.LIVE. We're all about trucking, the news, information, comedy, and music truckers want to hear. You know, the year 2020 is likely one everyone wants to put behind us. For many people, it's been filled with stress, anxiety, addiction, and mental health issues, especially with all the lockdowns and isolation. Our professional drivers have certainly been faced with lots of stress and mental health challenges as our frontline workers, and it's unique to the work which is stressful. That's why today we've invited Dr. Shanae P. Teran. Dr. Shanae is an organizational development psychologist, mental health therapist, certified social skills trainer, and author. She's going to use truckers face and give us some insights on how to cope. Welcome, Dr. Shanae. You have a wealth of experience, and I'm really looking forward to your insights.
Yes. Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
Could you tell our listeners a bit about who you are and what are you doing to help people?
Sure. Well, you did an amazing introduction.
Well, thank you.
Yes. And, just to add to that, I did a lot of work actually starting out in my mental health career as a licensed clinical social worker. So I've been a licensed therapist for over 15 years, and primarily I worked with veterans. Combat veterans that have been through some sort of trauma, whether it's from combat or, military sexual trauma. And from the work that I've done in that space and looking at the stress responses, I sort of veered off to really begin to help the systems, like the organizations that support those of us that were doing the work, because if you aren't well, you can't help anybody else. So I wanted to really help other folks and other organizations, really help the people doing the hard work, just like these truckers out there, and really being able to have the insights to support them. So I have my independent practice, even though I still work with the Department of Veterans Affairs. I have my independent practice of SP Consulting Group, where, our mission really is bringing people's visions to life of work-life balance. So I provide business and executive wellness coaching, and I do one-on-one services as well for business coaching as well as for therapy. So, that's a little bit of what I do.
So we could say that you're an expert in PTSD, complex PTSD, anxiety, and stress. The whole gamut. Mm-hmm. You can really understand what drivers, they encounter so many different things on the road. And I think this year has been especially challenging to them.
Absolutely. I believe it. It's definitely a lot going on out there, and being in their place, I definitely applaud them for all that they're doing. I'm sure it's been an uptake because so many people are, ordering more in bulk and, really trying to social distance. And so there's a lot of delivery services. So I'm sure their workload has increased during this time.
What do you suggest for, and I guess it would apply to anyone, how to deal with stress, especially in the case of drivers? Sleep is a hard thing to always get. Mm-hmm. And I would imagine that elevates anxiety and stress. What are some of your suggestions?
Sure. Well, I first like to help people understand the space that we're in with the stress and the burnout. I'm sure that in general, being a trucker, it brought on its stress, period, let alone now that we're in this pandemic. And one of the first things that I literally always say this to everyone that I work with, both individually and as a group, is to do a self-check. And a lot of people don't realize that the stress that they already had, plus the pandemic, plus, for the truckers, road rage and just all of the conglomerate of mess gets to build up. and it becomes compounding stressors, and it sneaks up on you actually, because you may have someone that's more on the positive end, and you're telling yourself, hey, let me just keep moving. But you get to a place where it's possible that you're engaging in toxic positivity. And that's basically where you're not addressing and processing and releasing this buildup of stress. And it gets to the point where you're absolutely burned out. Most likely you're going to have poor impulse control. And so one of the things that drivers and everybody out there these days can look out for is the mental and physical exhaustion, being more tired than usual, having more of a difficulty in grabbing your thoughts. A lot of us, even with, in general, may have trouble with our memory. But when you look at what is your baseline, you're looking at you're more tired and you're more physically and mentally, emotionally exhausted. And then something that you may not have noticed, maybe someone on the outside is looking in and is saying, yeah, you're more cynical. The cynicism is also a symptom of burnout. And it's basically where you're no longer into the job. You're just like, you know what? I really don't want to be here. I'm only coming in here to make a check. Whereas before you were like, I really love driving, like the freedom and all of that. But again, check the baseline. If you're more cynical than usual, you're finding yourself trying to use sort of your sick humor a little bit more than usual. And at the point where you're losing confidence in your abilities and skills, maybe you're starting to get more stress just from the fact that, wow, like I'm not driving the course that I usually would drive, or I'm not able to hold my peace, so to speak, when, I get the rude drivers or those that are road raging or getting in the way, cutting me off. You are like, I'm not doing as well. And now I don't even want to drive. Like, this is more difficult, having trouble sleeping. So when I talk about tips, it's like you have to keep that in mind. So whether it's making sure that you're getting adequate sleep, making sure that you're moving and stretching as much as possible, being sedentary can really get your body in the funk. And if you're having tension and muscle tightness from the stress, that's going to affect your mood. Making sure that you are practicing breathing exercises. Sometimes, some of you may have even noticed this, if you're in a crazy situation, say, for example, someone's road raging, they're trying to pull you to the side and you're trying to carry this load and it's like too much. It's like maybe that's that time where it's the straw that broke the camel's back. And you're like, you know what I advise you to do is, instead of acting on the impulse to get out that car and give them a piece of your mind, is practice breathing. Take some deep breaths. And one thing that has been proven through research is when you're taking deep breaths, you are allowing yourself to bring more oxygen to, just to go a little technical, you're bringing more oxygen to the prefrontal cortex that is actually releasing oxygen in blood to go to your survival mode. So when someone's cutting you off, you're getting upset, you're going into the fight, flight, freeze mode, and most likely the fight one. And you're in that space where you need to get your reasoning center, your strategic thinking center, which is the prefrontal cortex. You need to get that revved back up so that you can calm yourself, allow yourself to breathe, to take a moment of time to consider the consequences of your actions, for example, or to say, you know what? It's not that serious. This is what I deal with often. You take an emotional orientation to the stress management, which is, let me look at it differently, and for some, it may be, you know what, I need to do something more action oriented. And that's where you're doing the deep breathing and you're moving and stretching, listening to your favorite music, listening to this channel, listen to a podcast and doing things that actually help feed that wellness center that you need, mind, body, spirit. So that includes eating as healthy as you can, practicing the breathing, plan your routes, getting sleep, listening to your favorite music or podcasts, move and stretch. Those are some of the things that can be done to help when you're getting revved up, but also to manage it for the long haul. You want to be able to intentionally manage your stress and not allow it to creep up on you. Do the self-check, ask yourself some questions, let go of what you can't control, and actually modify your actions and your abilities, since that is the area that you do have control over. I always say separate the area of concern from your area of influence. If you can do something about it, do it. If you can't, you may want to slow down, deep breathe, and change course.
Wonderful tips. We're going to be listening to some more wonderful insight from Dr. Shanae P. Teran here on TNCRadio.LIVE on the Truckers Network Radio Show. This is the Truckers Network Radio Show. I'm Shelley Johnson with Tom Kelly, and we're talking with Dr. Shanae P. Teran, an organizational development psychologist and mental health therapist. Dr. Shanae, before we went to break, you were talking about checking your baseline when dealing with stress and anger. How do people find their baseline? I'm not sure that everybody thinks about that.
Sure. And it couldn't even be expected. You figure you know yourself. But generally speaking, we are, at least here in the U.S., we really are on a daily grind, whether it's to just make a living, grow a business, keep the family together. And we may not have noticed until this pandemic started that we don't know ourselves as well as we thought. Maybe even the same thing for others that we live with. But, we have to be in a space of sitting and having some alone time with ourselves. We have to practice mindfulness. We have to be aware of what's going on with us in any given moment. And I would say mix in mindfulness with emotional intelligence. And to briefly explain what those two are and why it's important to understanding your baseline, mindfulness is basically living in the moment. It is a type of meditation and is considered one of the complementary and integrative healthcare options nationwide. And it used to be derived from Buddhist practices. But now in the psychology field, we're in a place where we literally know how much it helps with cognition. And I know that I practice cognitive behavioral therapy, and it's basically the ability to understand how your thoughts impact not only your emotions, but your actions. And when you are practicing mindfulness, and there's different ways that you can go about it, but when you are being mindful, you are taking the time to be still with yourself and listen to what's going on with you, mind, body, and spirit. And that can be by doing deep breathing exercises. And while you're doing the deep breathing exercises, as thoughts come, you may notice them, but then you allow them to pass without judgment. You don't take on stress. You just observe them. And there's even a way of doing mindful journaling where you and essentially do like a brain dump, anything that comes to mind, just a stream of consciousness where you're just writing down or thinking about what you're thinking about, essentially. And you are doing it again. The biggest piece of that is without judgment. And you just explore what's going on. Why am I thinking this, or why am I feeling this? If you're doing the mindfulness practice of body scanning. You're noticing the stress that shows up in your body, and you are scanning each element of your body, and you're asking, okay, well, did my stress show up in my body? You know, some people don't know how they carry stress. It's not just about the outbursts, you know, that we usually associate with a stress response, you know, someone getting upset and going off on someone. Sometimes there's people that they internalize it, and they don't realize that they're actually then holding in that stress that then manifests into physical ailments, like you literally become sick. Some of the things that you may experience, like I said earlier, it was like trouble sleeping. You know, why am I having trouble sleeping? Then that's a form of a self-check through mindfulness. There's also, you know, am I like not sleeping at all? Am I not having restful sleep? Where am I with that? You know, some people may think that there's even issues with their blood pressure. You're maybe eating right. The doctor said that everything otherwise seemed fine, but the blood pressure is high. That may show up for some people. And when it's all said and done, if you take the time to know what's going on, you can do something about it. You know, have you ever tried to, you know, be very strategic with nothing? Not really.
That'd be tough to do. Yes,
you know what I mean? It's like, I'm going to take care of my health. And, you know, and it's like, but you don't even know what you need. So you have to take that time to pause, take some deep breaths, and begin to ask yourself, what is going on with me? And in the aspect of emotional intelligence, just what that is in quite simple terms is literally the ability to observe and acknowledge your emotions, to then be able to manage them, and take that information to guide how you interact with the environment, problem solving, relationships, and how are you empathetic to others. And even, for example, I said earlier how you can use the emotional way of doing the emotional orientation of doing stress management, right? And so one of those things could be, hey, you know what? Something might be going on with them. They may be in a rush. We never know. They may be rushing to somebody that they're hoping to see. I mean, given it's the pandemic, hoping to see in a hospital. You never know. How do you basically reframe what's going on if you don't even know that you're being bothered by it emotionally? And then once you know why you're being bothered about it, you basically ask yourself that question again. Can I do something about it that's legal and healthy, you know, that isn't going to make you more stressed and end up in a bad situation? But then you say, okay, well, if not, let me look at this. Do I need to hold on to this stress when my job is stressful enough? And usually the answer is no. But then you're going through that dialogue in your head. And so the only way that you can do, I think, a legit job of doing a self-check is to first sit still and figure out who you are and how you respond in this new normal. You know, if we were having this conversation before, I would still say the same thing. However, no one has ever, at least that I know of, that's still living, that's been through a pandemic like this. And so we also have to be kind to ourselves. We have to be in a space where we know that this is a trying time for us all. And you can't expect yourself to respond in the same way that you normally would. And so you pay attention to it and you begin to explore, what did I do last time? What did I do before this pandemic? Or what did I do the last time that it actually worked out and I ignored it? Or I moved on? Or I processed it in a way that was actually helpful to me doing what it is that I need to do in my job, you know? And so when it's all said and done, self-checks allow you to get a baseline so that you can know where to go. And since we are talking about stress management and identifying stress, and if it has gotten to the point of compounding stress, or if it's gotten to the point of complete burnout, which is recognized by the World Health Organization. And you have to get in the space of then doing something about it. Recognize, do something, and then begin to see if what you've done actually is impactful. I like to then combine some of the work that I've done as it pertains to organizational development. And one of the things that I got myself into was even systems redesign and looking at how they are, there are tools such as the short version of it is the PDSA, and that's Paul, David, Apple, Sam, PDSA. And, or I said A and then Apple again. So PDSA, and the whole point of it is to plan it, do it, study it, and act. And you go in that cycle for the purpose of really seeing if what you did works. And if there are any areas that can be improved upon, then you go that route and modify the initial plan. And I like to use that also when I'm in the conversation about stress management. Because if you are managing your stress and you have done your baseline, you're doing your self-check, you're checking yourself from the neck up, and then you're doing your body scan, seeing where the stress is. It is in that space that you can develop a plan that could actually work. And when you have a plan that works, and I'm saying even if you're not sure if it works, but it sounds good, start working on it, start doing it. You know, plan it, then do it, study it, take a look at if it's helpful, look at your past of how you've responded to the stressors, look at your past of when you felt light, you know, you didn't have that heaviness of stress. What was I doing when I felt lighter? Was I working out? You know, exercise decreases stress. You know, it increases, you know, the impact of the effects of on your body. Sure. And sometimes people get to the place where they are literally pumping endorphins back into their body, which is that feel-good neurotransmitter, mm-hmm. or, you know, some people know as the runner's high. You know, it's like that can be something as well. And if you try that and you're like, you know, that worked, I can do this. Then you say, okay, well, what could I do different about it? Maybe that worked. I was only doing 15 minutes of it. Then take it to the next level. Do 20 minutes, you know, be realistic and make sure that you're just persistent. You may not be consistent. You may not do these self-care things all the time, like working out or doing yoga, doing mindfulness, practicing emotional intelligence. You may not be aware of it to practice all the time. But the key point is to be persistent. Just keep trying.
And on that note, we're going to be listening to a bit of music and covering more of the self-check and mindfulness exercises and the wonderful insight that Dr. Shanae has with us on TNCRadio.LIVE. This is the Truckers Network radio show. I'm Shelley Johnson with Tom Kelly. We're talking with Dr. Shanae Teran, an organizational development psychologist and mental health therapist, on ways that drivers can lower stress, anxiety, and improve their coping skills. Dr. Shanae, you've got some great insight. Do you recommend mindfulness exercises daily? Should drivers start their day with that to improve their stress and how they react on the road?
Absolutely. I highly recommend it. I have, in my studies, I've looked at really both practically and otherwise the best way to do mindfulness. And I actually also have a certification in mindfulness-based stress reduction. It's MBSR. And it really is something that you can do any moment of the day for however long you need to do it. Even some of the mindfulness, deep breathing, you can literally do it for like 6 seconds, and those would be, for example, if you were to take your deep breath, breathing through your diaphragm, counting mentally to 5, and then as you breathe out, you count down to 4. It's like a 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 exercise. And it really, in those few seconds, can reset your mindset, bring you back to a place of peace. And when you do it every day, you're literally setting yourself up for the best outcome. And that's because we are creatures of habit, right? So no matter how stressed you get, sometimes it's hard to break out of the stress cycle because you have been in that mode for so long, almost in the survival mode, if you may. And it takes some time. It takes time. And you have to do this consistently, use this practice to the point where then it becomes muscle memory. Habits, according to the research, usually comes only about 6 months into the game. For some, it might be earlier, depending. But if you do something consistently, just know that the more you are consistent with it, the more you are persistent with putting this in your daily routine, you will get the best bang for your buck, so to speak. And mindfulness in the morning, absolutely recommended. First thing, especially if you're someone that can get into the practice of journaling, mindful journaling, doing a brain dump, first thing in the morning, where whatever comes to mind, you just put it all down on paper. And in some ways, you're symbolically releasing the tension and allowing the power that stress has on your body, and power being legitimately the power that leads stress to turn into mental health diagnoses, stress that then can turn into physical ailments and diagnoses. You take and eliminate and essentially dilute all the intense impacts of stress. And when you're practicing mindfulness and you're doing those brain dumps, first thing, even if your morning is in the middle of the night, when you first awake and you are practicing mindfulness, you are setting the tone for your day. And your brain then gets into that routine of when something happens, the thought comes of the memory of doing mindfulness with that habit. So instead of it coming up where it's, oh, I'm stressed, let me retreat. I'm stressed, let me lash out. It's, I'm stressed, hold on. And that's what you want. You want that space to give you time enough to do something about it that's actually productive to the ultimate goal. The ultimate goal is to make it to your drop-off site safe and the materials are there.
Oh, absolutely.
So, ultimately doing that regularly builds the habit. It becomes more natural to do. And I say that because some people, they've never heard of mindfulness. They're like, what are you talking about? How do I start? What do I do? And you can simply just start by breathing. And when you get distracted and the stress and what time is it? And all of that, you prepare yourself for that. You prepare your time to say, hey, I'm going to set an alarm on my phone or whatever on my watch to where it goes off in 10 minutes, in 5 minutes, 3 minutes, whatever time you have. And so then you can release the pressure of, let me make sure I don't get so much in the zone that I forget something. But you have that to alert you to, let's go to the next thing. But you truly give yourself that time. Honor that time for yourself. Eliminate distractions and truly get the impact that mindfulness can give you with that regular practice.
This would put drivers more in control. Certainly, they never know what they're going to encounter. They can have people cutting them off. All of a sudden, they have to act right now, and it's so easy to get into the fight-flight. I would think this would really help them be in more control of the situation and bring them their stress level back down. Because, I mean, your heart's in your throat sometimes when you encounter certain situations.
Absolutely. And I love that you bring that up in regards to control, because when it's all said and done, if you are only responding to things based on a trigger, you are not in control. Your brain is controlling the ship. And I'm pretty sure that with the truckers, you drive these long distances. And then if you're in the car, say on the time that you are off and you're just doing your regular thing, you may go into this autopilot zone. Like, you're used to driving long distances. So it's like your brain knows what to do, where to go, where to move, what to listen for. And if you're not paying attention, it takes you wherever. And you may end up in places that you're like, how did I even get here? Why am I at the gas station when I wanted to be at Target or something?
I've done that.
Yeah. Right? And so that is an example of how our brains have been trained up to a certain point by us and our experiences of how to respond. And if you're not able to cut it off and say, wait a minute, this is not a threat, I need to calm it down, then it sees everything as a threat. Everything is taken personally. Oh, they cut me off because they're trying to get me killed out here. No, they probably had to use the bathroom. I've been in the car and I've been rushing, and I'm pretty sure I've, rushed past a trucker or even a random car. Like, my son just was potty trained and there's no pull up on him and we got to get to a bathroom. He just said, Mommy, I have to pee. You never know. Sure. Don't take it personal.
Right.
And one thing that I love this quote that I came across. I'm really not even sure who posted it, but it was a quote that said, you have to train your mind to be stronger than your emotions, or else you'll lose yourself every time. So it really is about building up the strength to override your brain so that when it is not necessary to serve and protect, and it really is just someone being ignorant or haphazardly on their phone and veered off, they're eating a burger and something fell on them and they're veering, that it's not to be internalized. You have to keep it outside of you. You have to see it as, okay, yeah, that triggered my emotions, especially for those that may have any trauma in their past or certain triggers that are really on edge. Some people are hypervigilant. Maybe they've been in an accident before in their truck. And so you never know. But the biggest thing, again, is when you are practicing mindfulness, when you're doing these activities to bring your body back into your hands and hands that are, supportive of wellness, mind, body, spirit, then you can override it. You can sort of tripwire it and say, nope, I'm going over here. Yes, that's what I felt initially. Yeah, you have that feeling in your throat, or you get it in the center of your chest, or your stomach sort of go through up. It feels like it comes up and goes out your mouth, depending on what the situation is. And it's like, okay, let me calm myself down. Let me breathe. Let me think. What just happened? And by this time, they're long gone. You can say, okay.
You can reset and bring yourself back to center and in control. Those are so important. And these are things that drivers deal with every single day. And it's a stressful thing, certainly. Yeah. Mm-hmm. You're listening to the Truckers Network radio show. We're going to be talking some more with Dr. Shanae and her wonderful insights on things that drivers can do to lower their stress, increase their mindfulness, lower their blood pressure, you name it. This is also very helpful. This is the Truckers Network radio show on TNCRadio.LIVE. I'm Shelley Johnson with Tom Kelly, and we're talking with Dr. Shanae P. Teran, an organizational development psychologist and mental health therapist who's been giving us some awesome insight for drivers. Dr. Shanae, we've covered some excellent pointers. Could you give us any additional insights you have on what you think our drivers need to know? What do they do next?
Well, I would say, first of all, I'm going to go in order of level of intensity. If you are listening to this and you're like, oh my goodness, even talking about this triggered me and I am going into tunnel vision, I would say pull over and dial 911 first. Second would be if you're in that high to moderate going down level of stress and you're like, you know what, I do need to do something about it. I can still, finish what I'm doing right now, but I do need to talk to somebody right now. You all can call that national crisis line. It's 1-877-525-8717. Again, that's 1-877-525-8717. If you're a veteran and you're out there driving, you can dial that same number. Just press 1 at the prompt if you're a veteran, okay? There's also a crisis line that is specifically for connecting to a counselor 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And you would, and that's a nationwide number that you would actually text the word home, HOME, to 741741. And that again, you text home to 741741. And that is for connecting with the crisis counselor 24/7. If you're just like, I'm not that, stressed, but I do get stressed regularly and maybe I could benefit from working with someone on a long-term basis and it's not a crisis, you can definitely just reach out to me. I'm licensed in Ohio and in California. I also do wellness coaching. So that is nationwide and internationally wellness coaching. It takes a different spin on the mental health support as opposed to therapy. And you can reach me at www.official, S as in Sam, P as in Parker, consultinggroup.com. That's www.officialspconsultinggroup.com. I have a Get Connected page, and you can just let me know what you need on there, and I will get the email, or my team members will get the email. And even if you want, as far as I talked about journaling. Some people would rather do journaling. And I have on my site, if you go to the website and go onto the services and products page at the very bottom, I have my, I authored a journal, a mindfulness journal, and it's called Self-Care is Self-Love. And it's for those that are looking for some action items to do to build up their mindfulness practice. So it gives you space to write, but it also has very specific and evidence-based mindfulness activities for you to do and to process. So you can definitely go there.
Fantastic.
That's a great concept.
Yeah.
Self-care is self-love, you said? Is the
yes.
Mm-hmm. Excellent. And again, people can reach you at official, that's the word official, S as in Sam, P as in Paul, consultinggroup.com, official spconsultinggroup.com to reach Dr. Shanae. And thank you so much for the 800 numbers as well. I'm not sure that everyone knows that they're out there. And there is help available. I imagine they've been working overtime with everything in 2020.
Oh, for sure. For sure.
Could you give me that first 800? Could you give me that first 800 number again real quick?
Sure. It's 1-877-525-8717.
8717.
And that's for the National Crisis Line.
Yes. And press 1 at the prompt if you're a veteran and you want to speak specifically in regards to issues that, may or may have triggered some of your time in service. So definitely feel free to use that.
We have a little over a minute, Dr. Shanae. Do you have a final word or thought for us for the day?
I would say during this time, don't make any major decisions. It is stressful out there, and that's in regards to both at home and at work. Really take it easy, focus on the positive, and do brain dumps to get rid of the negative.
That's a great philosophy for everyone. Words to live by every single day.
Absolutely.
I will make a note of that for myself as well.
Yes.
Thank you so very much for spending time with us, Dr. Shanae. Your insight has been absolutely tremendous, and I think that it's given maybe a new perspective to people, drivers, truckers, even people who don't drive for a living. It's definitely words to live by. You're listening to TNCRadio.LIVE. This is the Truckers Radio Network show. This is the Truckers Network Radio show. We're going to be having the Evening Surge coming up next after the top of the hour news. I'm Shelley Johnson here with Tom Kelly, and definitely Dr. Shanae, we'd like to have you back. Your insight's just been tremendous. Thank you again.
Hey,
Thank you for having me.
We posted all that information, those numbers and everything on our webpage, so if you're driving right now and can't get to it, just go back to TNCRadio.LIVE and you can get all of that information there, including pictures of and links to Dr. Shanae.
You're listening to TNCRadio.LIVE, Houston, Texas. This station is owned and operated by EMSICO, LLC, a privately held Texas corporation.
USA Radio News with Tim Berg.
President-elect Joe Biden says millions of Americans can't wait any longer for Congress to pass a stimulus bill to help the economy.
It's affecting everyone from farmers to students, seniors.
TNCRadio.LIVE, your commercial driver navigation station.
Hi, this is Tom Kelly, managing partner of EMSICO, LLC, doing business as TNCRadio.LIVE. The website TNCRadio.LIVE and any content or podcast related to the website are copyrights of EMSICO, LLC, copyright 2021. All rights reserved. Any redistribution or reproduction of all or any part of the contents in any form is prohibited other than the following. We welcome you to download and play the publicly available podcast and share with others for personal use. Please acknowledge TNCRadio.LIVE as the source of the material. You may not, except with our express written permission, distribute or commercially exploit the content. And while we endeavor to keep the information up to date and correct, we make no representations or warranties of any kind expressed or implied about the completeness, accuracy, reliability, suitability, or availability with respect to the website, the podcast, or the information, products, services, or related graphics contained on the website or podcast for any purpose. Any reliance you place on such information is therefore strictly at your own risk. For additional information, including details regarding monetization of this podcast, send email to podcasts@tncradio.live.